Welcome to Leaders and Legends, the podcast focused on leadership and clinical trial execution. I'm your host, Patty Lushton, CEO of Diligent Pharma. In each episode, we'll get to know the individuals who are driving change and influencing the direction of our industry. Whether you're a seasoned executive yourself, an emerging leader, or simply passionate about clinical trials like I am, join us as we discuss our industry's most pressing challenges, the future of clinical trials, and hear insights and advice from the leaders who are moving our industry forward. Welcome, David, to Leaders and Legends. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast.
Patty, super happy to be here. So thanks for hosting.
Yes, so it occurred to me that some of our listeners might not know Thrivable. I know you've been rocking and rolling in the healthcare space, but with clinical trials, Thrivable may be new to some of the people that are tuning in. And so I wonder if you could start with that. Like, what is Thrivable, but also what's the why behind Thrivable?
The why behind Thrivable. So I think for that, we got to go like way, way, way back. I'm like a lifelong geek. Imagine I had a dial-up BBS running out of my bedroom when I was 13 years old. Connecting with people all around Northeast Ohio, and kind of always had this like desire to kind of solve problems. I would just like sink my teeth into something and want to know, how does this work? And I did that Simon Sinek exercise of like, you ask why does that matter? Why does it matter? And for me, it came back to like co-creation. I like solving problems. I like doing it with other people. And so in my early 20s, I met someone newly diagnosed with diabetes, and we were trying to figure this thing out together. Like, you can imagine all this real world stuff. Like, okay, I'm going to go eat some pizza. How much insulin do I take? Like, I want to run a marathon. What do I do with my insulin pump and my insulin? Or like the internal journey. Like, how does it affect my relationship? How does it affect my self-esteem? And if you can just imagine, anyone who lives with a chronic illness, if you don't, like, your pancreas isn't working, your blood sugars are changing continuously, and you have to do your pancreas's job 24/7, 365 for all eternity.
I didn't think of it that way, but yes, you're right.
It's hard and it's exhausting. And so we reached out online for support, and we didn't find a good resource. And so we decided to start an online community called Diabetes Daily to connect people. And it ended up just becoming this incredible kind of force of nature, eventually reaching over 1 million people a month. And it was, for me, an incredible way to both connect and empower people, and also to get this really interesting 360-degree view of the healthcare system, because my job was basically translational, to take what are the top scientists and researchers, and what is the FDA saying, and what is industry saying, and talking to all these people, and then translating what is going on in this whole world in a way that's accessible to patients. So I got to be a professional geek. and yeah, so I loved every moment of that. And then
can I just ask you, what year was this that you were getting this off the ground? 2005.
And I was thinking, Facebook started years ago. We're so late to social media. Like we're an also ran, it was kind of, it was,
so we really just early. That's pre-patients like me, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, that whole diabetes experience worked really, really well. But frankly, I hate, we made money selling advertising, and I hate advertising. I pay like $13 a month to YouTube so I can like skip the 2 ads and the 2 videos I watch, because I just like to have like a pristine, unadvertised experience.
Same.
And I think many of us probably feel that way. I wish we could get rid of billboards. Anyway. So I was looking for something that we could do that was more tightly tied to creating value, so that we didn't have to depend on Google and Facebook. We didn't have to depend on selling advertising. And we could do something where when we helped somebody, we created value, and we were in control of our own destiny. And I remember, I guess the real moment was, I was chatting with Luis Diaz, who was chief patient officer at Medtronic, at a conference. And he's like, you guys you're just sitting on all this data. It is so valuable. And I said, Luis, I have no idea what you're talking about. I've heard that before, but like
Yeah.
we have blog posts that you can read them. We have forum posts, you can read them. We have email addresses of people, but like we can't sell them to you because we protect the privacy of our people. Like, I don't understand. And he said, research. He said, you have this ability to connect with people and we need that. And he kind of walked through and laid out what really has become the entire business model of Thrivable, and started talking to all of the people we're working with in industry, and just heard again and again and again how hard it was to connect and engage with patients. It was just this continuous pain point. And so we said, okay, there's this giant chasm between industry and patients. And I was feeling it as a patient advocate. Like, we'd always talk with industry and I'm like, oh my God, they just don't understand so much about this experience. And so it just felt like this magical opportunity. So we started Thrivable, and we recruited 100,000 people onto our platform. And we said, okay, we're going to close this gap between patients and the world of organizations that serve them. And we've went to market, and we launched in 2021, and we signed up every single diabetes technology company that has a product in the US, and net promoter scores over 70, which is really, really high. It's like Apple and Amazon.
Oh, I know.
And
I mean, yes, that's high.
so got really, really happy customers, and we've grown. We've for like one of the largest tech brands in diabetes. We became their like exclusive recruitment partner for human factor studies now 2 years in a row. And for many of them, we are the primary way that they get access to patient insights. And so it's been an exciting journey.
That's amazing. And congratulations, because that's no small feat, especially during a pandemic, right? So this is really just in the last three years that you have been able to do this, which is really amazing. I think, the first time you and I spoke, which was just this past year, you were one of the people that I think it was either Todd Johnson or Tom from FCA introduced us, and one of the people I'm grateful to have met in 2024. But I think our first conversation, maybe the first sentence or the second sentence out of your mouth, was really around your company culture, and I was struck by that because culture is near and dear, of course, to my heart, being a business owner. And I wonder if I want to get back to Thrivable. There's so much to talk about there in terms of expansion into other therapeutic areas and what your plans are. But can we talk for a bit about the company itself and your leadership and what is important to you, and in particular, how sort of culture plays into what you do? And is it kind of part of how you've had all this success over the last several years?
I think so. I think we've had just really created a team of people that are so incredibly passionate and really appreciate working together. That's my experience, at least. And I ask and I try to like really figure it out. And I think in people's heart of hearts, they wake up each day and they go to work and they're like, I like being here. I like being in this environment. And for me, entrepreneurship was almost like the only option left, because early on in my career, I was like, I don't like going to an office where it's cold and kind of unhuman, and the interactions. I'm like, I wanted to be my full vibrant self, and I wanted to go work on things that I cared about, and like, so like, what, you kind of have to go start your own thing. And my COO, Ryan Fuchs, who was the person who joined me basically from the first day of Thrivable, he recalls how during his interview, I was like giving him this pitch. I'm like, Ryan, there's no reason why you can't wake up happy. Go to work with people you love, do amazing things, just feel totally happy, and then go on your way and like live the rest of your life, because work is only one piece of your life. Like, you have this whole thing going on. And he's like, he remember like feeling really skeptical. He was like the thick of working at Deloitte, long, stressful days, flying all across, like just doing these thankless consulting projects. And he's like, that's impossible. You can't create an environment like that. And then you start to think, well, actually, why can't you?
Why not?
Why can't you do that?
Yeah, right.
And so I think it's, so when we hire, like one of the key things I look for is people who are very self-driven, high performance. They're in it because they just like to be doing this. Like they want to solve hard problems. They want to work with other really creative and intelligent and driven people. And so starting there and then just layering on a culture that we're hiring and screening and promoting and talking about our values of putting people first, of cultivating joy, listening to understand, and servant leadership, scrappy and fast, deliver extraordinary. I actually
Yes.
think we might need to add another. I don't want to add more values. We have 6, but like I discovered this year that listen to understand like only works when it's paired with speak your truth. We
Interesting.
noticed
Yes.
a couple times where people had like misgivings about something we might have been doing, and they were good
Right.
misgivings because they were right and like I was
Yeah.
wrong, and they didn't come to the surface. And so like, it's a little bit of an evolving process to like kind of really understand what makes our culture tick and what we want to amplify and reward and make
Yes.
core to what we do.
Yeah. Very cool. I, yeah, I know you're doing very, very important, serious work. But as I hear you talk, I get the sense that the work is sort of a playground for you, right? An outlet for your, creativity and passions. And I'm curious about that. And is that a true statement that you're sort of tapping into your creativity as a leader of Thrivable?
Oh yeah, and that's dangerous. There's like a tool called Culture Index that you can kind of, it's like a
Like a predictive
Myers-Briggs,
index
and
type? Yeah.
yeah, and it
Mm-hmm.
kind of breaks you out. And I was having a trainer go over with mine. He's like, you are like very, very high energy, very, very high on the ingenuity scale, and you're like level 10 nonconformist. He's like, what that means is you're going to like this nonconformist you can be. So he's like, you're gonna have 100 ideas. And 50 of them you really are going to not want to pursue. And like 40 will be
Yes.
decent, and 10, 9 will be outstanding, and 1 will be genius. And so I have had to learn to like build a team that can be like, a like Ryan, my integrator, my COO, is like a interface between me and the team to help like kind of screen this stuff to make sure only the good stuff gets through. So there's kind of that piece of it of self-knowledge. It's been part of my journey, but like more deeply, I don't know. I'm like 43 now, and I feel like in my 30s, I just was really wrestling with like, what is life all about? Like, what is the like? And
Yeah.
I remember sitting next to my wife Carrie's Gigi, her grandmother, who's like in her late 90s, and it's like the last year or two of her life. And I just kept having this feeling of like, we all kind of end up eventually at the other end of our career. We retire and we leave this piece, and like you end up just
Mm.
kind of surrounded by family. And I just had this period of like really wrestling with like, what is the meaning of work? And I kind of came to this idea that every day I want to do things that create value, that make the world a better place. And that's a piece of it. And then the rest of it is just about the people that we get to meet, the people we get to
Yeah.
engage with. And it's just kind of human, like we're social
Right.
beings, humans.
Yeah.
And like, so part creating value for the community, and part just getting joy from the community. Um, I kind of like de-emphasized work altogether. As long as I'm doing something meaningful, and
Mm-hmm.
economics are one way to measure how many people, like, margin is mission. Like I want to do something that touches a lot of people, and I want it to be
Right.
sustainable. So like you end up getting into the math of like business, but it's
Yeah.
not where my heart is.
Well, I had dinner with my son last night, who's visiting. He's in from LA. His grandmother is very ill. And we had a very similar conversation to what you just described. He's in his early 30s. And, I've said, look, he was describing this dream he has of getting a business launched. But he's trying to make sure that he's taking the right steps and that he's, doing it the right way. And I said, don't let life pass you by. Like when I started my business, I told him that I don't think I had any special skill except that when I feel an instinct or a spark inside of me that gets me really excited about something, I pay attention to it and I know how to get things moving. I kind of can activate things. That's pretty much it, and then I surrounded myself with people who knew a lot more than I do. And it sounds like you are also thinking about the balance too within your own organization of talent and experiences so that you're creating this sort of full, kind of a complement to what you're bringing to the table as well.
Yeah, I wish I had figured that out a lot sooner. I feel like I was more like a solo entrepreneur for a long time and, or like a very, very small team. And like, you're starting out, I didn't have a lot of money to like hire people who were super experienced. So I'm trying to do everything really
Right.
scrappily. But I think there's a big cost to doing things alone, to not like go out and like find a co-founder and a partner, people that can really help you like check your ideas and make you better.
Yeah. Yeah. You said something that my ears perked up a little bit. You said that you have an integrator. So does that mean you're following the entrepreneurial operating system with
Oh yeah.
EOS?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. We're totally an EUS company. I think it's like our quarterly rock, our quarterly goal for like, I think 10 or 15 quarters was to like implement EOS, but we finally like arrived at the promised land and it's been great.
Yeah. Well, and for people who are kind of listening to this, it's EOS is sort of a system for really any size business, but it creates a lot of stability and sort of a foundation to basically a launch pad with consistency in terms of meetings and measurables and vision and planning and strategy. And yeah, so I think that's interesting and probably helped with your growth over the last several years. I'm imagining.
So much. If anyone hasn't wants to check it out, Traction by Gino Wickman is the
Yes,
the book that and I found there was a kind of follow-up kind of book called Rocket Fuel,
rocket
which is
fuel.
about how
Yes,
you work with your integrator, your number two. Like, what is
exactly.
your job as a visionary?
I
What is
think
your
that
job as an integrator?
simple. It was a simple book, but really, really impactful. Um, so I want to get back to Thrivable for a bit here, because what you described, I mean, light bulbs were going off in my mind in terms of just how with clinical trial execution, how that type of platform could be transformational. And can you talk a little bit about sort of what your plans are in the future and how you see Thrivable supporting clinical trial execution?
Sure, sure. So I think our secret sauce is really this creating these detailed longitudinal patient records that capture, not just the what, but the why to really understand the patient experience deeply. And that knowing a lot about somebody, like both what their attributes are and what makes them tick, is like lets you do a really good job of matching and making connections for the purpose of anything, but especially salient in the research space. And so like I've been thinking a lot about, when you go through the clinical trial life cycle, all the ways in which the clinical trial experience is extremely important. Right on the front end, someone's enrolling in a trial, are they going to drop out? Like, what is motivating them to be in a study, and what's once they're in the study, right? What's the actual experience within the trial? What's the protocol? Is it working? Is it not working? If it's not working, why is it not working? And then after the trial, like we want more patient experience data to be part of FDA submissions to kind of paint that 360, disease experience on product. And then, afterwards, okay, if something makes it all through the FDA, you're going to go to market. Well, you have to map out the patient journey and you have to. So like this patient experience is an important thread that I think touches every part of the trial experience. And you have been very helpful in helping me visualize and kind of bring that to life for myself. And so we've been doing a lot of piloting internally in the last year with clinical trials, and And we've been doing human factor studies now for several years, and we've seen just some really, really high conversion rates. And this is an area that I think we're going to lean pretty heavily into, and especially on really our expertise in collecting data of what drives patient behavior to see how we can really bring some innovative products to market that help us enhance engagement, enhance retention, enhance our ability to not let all that data about the experience go. Like these trials are these rich
Right.
opportunities to collect data. And right now, everything is so outcome based. And
Yes. And well, first of all, you know, one of the biggest changes since I've been in the clinical trial space for the last 30 plus years is this movement towards being patient centric, right? I mean, in the early days, they weren't even called patients, they were called subjects, you know? And so that's been positive. But it's not really operationalized. There's no consistency. There's still, um, a lot of confusion in some cases, and in other cases, just the challenges around making this happen in a consistent way. And I'm just curious, what you see as some of the barriers to bringing this forward in a big way. I mean, one of the things that pops in my mind are silos. That the what you're describing is sort of a right to left type thinking of let's kind of give some thought to the even after the drug is approved and submissions. Let's think about that very early on when you're creating your protocols. And it sounds like Thrivable could support that. But are you bumping up against challenges, and how do sort of the silos play into what you're doing?
oh, that's so astute. And I'm sure you feel that in your work very, acutely, the
Yes.
siloing. And I mean, at the end of the day, I think for this market, we have some theories, but I think we're going to need to find some small wedges that enable us to provide some value in a very specific way early on in the process. And then
Right.
we can demonstrate, hey, this value we're providing here, if we continue to collect and understand this experience, it just, the payoff are like layered. And so if we can justify more patient engagement on the front end and during a trial, then the other stuff that comes after it will just be bonuses. I think trying to sell an end-to-end vision is really hard. If I can sit down with a couple more pharma CEOs as we get a little farther along, maybe I
Yes.
can say, hey guys, why don't you go and really deploy this at a certain amount of scale, because it's going to make a difference, because
Right.
you want to get this right. We want to like add this layer of experience. I was looking at some ZS study, and they're like 84% of pharma programs are measuring their actions, and only 10% are measuring anything about the patient experience. And that's wild. You're like hitting you're pressing a button here, and you're watching this thing go up and down over here, but you have
Yeah.
no idea what's actually happening in the middle, because it's a human experience. Like, you have feelings, you have ideas, behaviors, beliefs that are determining how you're going to act. And in medicine, like, not a lot of things are you get a single pill and you leave and you're done. Like, these things require ongoing engagement. They affect your life. You have to be
Right.
committed to
It's very
this
nuanced. Yeah.
complex experience. And doesn't that matter? Shouldn't we be looking at it?
Yeah. Well, I think it's very smart to sort of break this out into bite-sized pieces. And as you said, find that, sort of wedge. I think it's maybe a mistake that I've made in the past of sort of communicating sort of the big vision, the big picture, you know, what is possible if you bring a group of companies, for example, together and drive change through collaboration. It's sometimes it's communicating a big vision might be almost like mildly interesting to a leader, but understandably, they are needing to kind of look at the tasks at hand and what's right in front of them. And there's pressure and timelines and competing priorities. And so I've had to sort of discipline myself to get sort of more in touch with the individual company, their individual needs, how we can drive value to address those needs rather than trying to sort of put forth a big agenda. But it's tempting because what you're doing could actually be transformational for patients. And you want to sort of cast as wide of a net as possible, right? And get as many companies on board and looking at the end to end, because that's where the real win is. But the way to get there is, as you said, that first step. And it sounds like partnerships is maybe one of the potential strategies of finding companies where you could actually replicate what you've done in diabetes in other areas in partnership with a pharma or biotech company. Is that? I'm just thinking out loud here, but spitballing. But is that something that you're exploring?
Yeah, I mean, we've taken really a strong, like, if you think about, like, we're building an ecosystem, right? And on the one side, you have people who have populations that they engage with. And it could be everything from, like, oh, I'm a med tech pharma company. I have my patient list or people on my hub, whatever it is. And then you have, all these sorts of affinity groups and nonprofits, or, all different kinds of groups that have these big populations of people. And then people are often coming to them saying, hey, can we help you? We want to recruit into clinical studies. We want to do this. We want to do that. But if collecting and understanding data about your population and navigating these relationships isn't your core competency, that's really hard to do. So I think there's an opportunity for us to be a service provider for all these people of giant patient populations and help make these populations accessible for a variety of use cases, whether it's like, these med tech companies doing product research versus clinical research or human factors or political advocacy. Like, there's just like a slew of reasons. And so if we can just help really close that chasm, right? And make it, build a little bridge. You could just kind of walk neatly across it, or, a little moving walkway in the airport. But I wanted to, one thing that you said before, just popped up, like, the interesting thing about pharma has been the overall conservatism. And someone shared a story with me early this year that really drove it home. He's like, if you really want to understand Lilly's culture, you have to understand, if you go to law school, and, your first year law student, one of the first cases you will study is, the United States versus Eli Lilly. Are you familiar with this case?
No.
Imagine being like a marketing person. You're at Lilly, you're just kind of doing your job, and 20 some years ago, 30 years ago, and you go to send out kind of a marketing email to Prozac users, and instead of using the BCC field, you pop all those names into the CC field, thereby alerting every single user of your product who all the other users are, and kind of revealing this kind of PII at scale. And it's like there's this like sense of the risk, right? That, like, in many cases, if you have a successful products in market, it's like safer to do nothing than to do something. And so there's like this very strong like risk aversion. And so from that perspective, that's kind of been why I feel like there is this trade-off between thinking big and thinking small. I think people recognize they need to move in this area. So I want to paint a picture of vision, but I also want to show a pathway of getting there that is devoid of risk, right? This is something that's not going to...
Oh my gosh. Well, we just met as a leadership team over the last couple of days for our end of year EOS annual. It was sort of the conversation that we had, because what we're doing with our company is we're not doing anything rogue. In fact, we're driving, very high compliance and rigor. Yet it's a different way of working, right? So we kind of had this conversation of how do you de-risk in a way your offering so that there's not so many barriers to entry. And yeah, it's, that's something that you and I should continue a conversation around because we're working in different realms, but there's some similar challenges there, which is really a challenge that is pervasive throughout the industry of how to adopt innovation, right? And, our company's really innovation ready. But if individual organizations don't figure that out, then what's going to suffer are patients, right? So there is a sort of industry imperative to adopt new ways of thinking, new ways of working. And that brings me to just a question about, with the amount of data and, sort of interesting, juicy data that you have on patient experiences, how is Thrivable leveraging sort of, generative AI or new technologies to draw insights from that data?
Oh, this is, very, I mean, I'm sure it's a big passion for everybody now who's
Yeah.
creating anything. When I think about how I met with the chief decision officer at Google at an event and kind of walked through, and she had this like beautiful kind of look at the ecosystem. And I don't remember all the details, but the key is like, on the one hand, you can like, you have like data, then you have, models, then you have like kind of distribution, and there's like this whole like trying to create better models really, really hard, right? I can't compete against OpenAI. I don't have, $1 billion a month to spend on like R&D, but but we do have a lot of this data. So the question is, how can we use data to train better models that enable us to create more insights? And so I think the whole idea, I've seen some amazing examples of like synthetic patients. Like if you can feed a whole bunch of like behavioral and experience data, you can create kind of little bots that are reasonably representative of a human in the real world. So like I think in the research space, the ability to like gut check ideas off of models of humans that are fed by a lot of real world data, I find that area super, super interesting. Obviously, the ability to have a large data set that you would never be able to code by hand, like there's just no like economically viable way to do it.
Right.
To be able to turn that into like an effortlessly queryable data set, I think is super cool.
Right.
So
I mean, that's really sort of this new frontier that is going to just unlock so much potential and possibility. I could talk to you all day long, David. I feel like I just have one other question, which is more on the personal side. Because I mean, it sounds like you really integrate your professional life and your personal life in some ways, in terms of what you bring to the workplace. But, what do you do to blow off steam? Like, what do you do for fun? Just to, relieve stress as a leader of a growing company.
Okay, I got a couple things. So first, I love playing music. I joined a band recently. I've been like,
cool.
And I've been getting better. So one thing is when I turned 30, I had this aha moment that I thought I wasn't a great musician. And it was because I was in a band in high school and like half of them went on to become professional musicians. They were all world class. And I was just good. And I needed a lot of practice. And then I had this moment at 30, I'm like, you know what? I'm just doing this to have fun. Like, why do I keep making it like a performance thing? And I don't care if my voice is off kilter. And I'm just here to like enjoy. So like the music thing has become really salient. Recently, I got a virtual drum kit right on the other side of that window, like learning some drums.
Fun.
And then the other big thing has been, from an early age, I like solved everything with my intellect. It's very, very intellectual. Everything was an intellectual problem. And I had this like wildly interesting kind of spiritual awakening moment 2 years ago where I actually quieted my mind. And I don't think my mind had been quiet for 15 seconds, literally since I was 2. Like it has just been going. And I kind of leaned into that. And I've spent since then a lot of time on like kind of Vipassana meditation, which is part of Buddhism, and different styles of meditation. And for a long time, I thought that was just, it struck me as a boring and a silly, like what is that? Like, what do you mean meditate? Like, what is that all about? But I've come to see it's like the same intellectual curiosity I've had about the world and solving all these problems, to like turn that curiosity inwards and just understand, like, what am I? Like, what is this thing
Yes.
that is me, and my awareness, and the way the thoughts and the feelings bubble up and change and move. And it turns out it's like extraordinary. It's not boring at all. It's extraordinarily fascinating. You just have to
Mm,
like sit still long enough to be able to observe, like to actually gain some internal awareness. And I somehow
yeah.
never did that. It's shocking to me.
Yeah. Well, and when you get to that place, there is, I feel, a foundation that helps you to trust your instincts in a
Mm.
more powerful way. And you were talking, I got the chills because, again, this kind of reminded me of a conversation I had this week with a friend. And I was saying, as a kid, I was very interested in outer space and, space travel. When I was in kindergarten, I was probably the only little girl that dressed up as an astronaut for Halloween. Everybody else was princesses. And I just was fascinated with outer space. And then at some point, maybe teenage years, early 20s, I kind of directed all of that fascination inward and found that there is this expansive universe to explore that is internal, right? So, there's the cosmos externally that is endlessly fascinating, but sort of the discipline of going inward has really shaped my life for the last 20, 30. Oh my
Mm.
gosh, I'm losing track of time, maybe 40 years. I'm getting old. And it doesn't end. It's a journey that just keeps going and endlessly interesting and fascinating. And I'm sure you're bringing that into your work life with your employees, and they're benefiting from all of that meditation and exploration as well. So I really honor that.
Mm.
So, David, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time and looking forward to continuing all these conversations in the future. So, and best of luck with Thrivable.
Thank you, Patty. This has been really precious to spend this time with you, and I cannot wait to, we'll hit stop. I can't wait to talk to you some more in the days, weeks, and months and years to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.